So without wasting time, let's move to the game. So in this game, Mikhail Tal play with black pieces and Azerbayev play with white. So white starts with e4, c6, d4, d5, Karogan defense, e5, cover this f6 square to prevent knight to f6, Karogan defense advance variation. So Tal continue with c5, c4, knight to c6, d takes c5. So if Tal take this pawn, then black could exchange his queen immediately. Didn't take this pawn and continue with d4, bishop to f4, e6. Open the bishop's diagonal. Knight to f3, bishop takes c5, a3. So white's plan is clear. So Tal prevent with a5 to cover this b4 square. So if white continue with b4, then Tal could take this pawn. But white couldn't take this pawn because white would lose his rook. So white continue with knight b to d2, h6, knight to e4, create pressure on bishop, b6, knight f to d2, knight g to e7, knight takes bishop, b takes knight, knight to e4. So pressure on pawn, but Tal castles king side. So if white take this pawn, then knight to g6 comes, and also Tal could create pressure on bishop and pawn. And after moving bishop, Tal could take this pawn with any knight. So white first move his bishop from here. Bishop to g3, knight to g6. So pressure on pawn. So white continue with f4. Create support on e5. And also create space for bishop. Queen to b6. Bishop to d3. Knight c to e7. Because this knight has no room on queen side. So knight couldn't do anything on queen side. So Tal shift his knight on king side. Queen to d2, knight to f5, bishop to f2, bishop to b7. And white castles king side. Queen to c6, rook a to e1. Queen to c6. White can't move his knight from here because direct threat is checkmate. So white continue with rook a to e1 and support this knight. Rook f to d8, and Tal's plan is different. So white continue with g4 and create pressure on knight. So Tal continue with knight to e3, and white has to take this knight with his bishop because white's rook is stuck on f1. So white continue with bishop takes knight, and now you can understand that why Tal move his rook on d8. So Tal continue with d takes bishop, and bishop is pinned. So white continue with queen takes e3 and remove this pin. But this is not end. Tal continue with rook to d4 and create pressure on knight. But knight can't move from here because queen's eye on g2, and no one piece is protecting this g2 square. So this knight is very important for white. So white continue with rook to e2. So I think white want to move his rook on e1, then create more support on this knight. And also white protect this g2 square with his rook. So I'll continue with rook a to d8 and create pressure on bishop. So white support with rook to d1, And here in this position, pause the video and think Tal's final move. So now you can see that this bishop is pinned by both rooks. So, and this knight has only two support, queen and rook. This bishop can't count because this bishop is pinned by both rooks. So why we didn't add this bishop on knight support? Because white's rook has no support. So Tal's final move. Rook takes knight, and after rook takes knight, white resigned here. Because if white take this rook and create pressure on queen, but after moving bishop, this rook has no support. So first, rook takes rook comes and check. And after moving king, Tal could exchange his queen. And so white has to resign in endgame. And if white continue with queen takes rook, then also Tal could exchange his queen. Then after rook takes queen, Tal could exchange his bishop with rook. But white can't take this bishop because white would lose his material and white would down in material. And after queen takes queen, if white take this queen with his bishop, then you can see that this rook has no support. So first rook takes rook check comes, and after moving king, bishop takes bishop, and after rook takes bishop, white would down in material. So after rook takes knight, white resigned here. If you like the game, then comment how the game was, and bye for now.